The sun was setting over Manila, painting the sky with shades of orange and red as Manny Pacquiao drove through the bustling streets of the Philippine capital. After a long series of political commitments and an exhausting training session, the boxing champion felt the weight of fame and responsibilities on his shoulders. He had promised to visit some schools in underprivileged neighborhoods as part of his social program, something he did frequently, but always disguised in simple clothes, a worn-out cap, and dark sunglasses to avoid commotion and ensure that his presence wouldn't divert attention from the true purpose of the visit. Lapu-Lapu Elementary School was located in one of the poorest neighborhoods in the city, with peeling walls and cramped classrooms where fans barely worked in the suffocating heat. Manny parked his car a few blocks away and walked to the back entrance, where he was discreetly received by Principal Imelda Reyes, a middle-aged woman who had dedicated her entire life to educating children from that neighborhood. The principal led him through the nearly empty corridors, explaining that most students had already gone home, except for a few children who were participating in extracurricular activities or waiting for their parents who worked late. A classroom at the end of the corridor caught Manny's attention when he heard the sound of a child reciting a poem with a determined voice. He asked the principal if he could take a peek and saw a skinny boy of about 10 years old, with a school uniform faded from so much use, standing in front of his teacher. The young educator, Ms. Ligaya Santos, was listening attentively while the boy gestured passionately, reciting verses about courage and perseverance against all adversities. Manny felt an immediate connection to that scene, remembering his own difficult childhood in the streets of General Santos City, where hunger and poverty were constant companions. It was then that the teacher noticed his presence at the door, and not recognizing him due to the meticulous disguise that Manny had perfected over the years for his anonymous visits, politely invited him to enter and meet her only remaining student that afternoon, a special boy named Emmanuel Manny Dagahoy, who had been named in honor of the great national idol who had inspired so many Filipinos to believe in their dreams. The little Manny Dagahoy's eyes widened when the stranger entered the room, having no idea he was in the presence of his hero and namesake. Teacher Ligaya explained that the visitor was there to learn about the school's educational projects, and the boy, with surprising confidence for his age, extended his hand to greet him. The boxer shook the small, calloused hand of the boy, noticing the calluses that resembled his own when he started boxing training to escape poverty. As they talked, the champion discovered that young Manny not only shared his name, but also his humble origins and unwavering determination. The boy lived with his sick grandmother, Lola Esperanza, in a small shack on the outskirts of Manila, and every day he woke up before dawn to sell flowers and newspapers at busy street corners before going to school. Despite all the difficulties, the boy maintained exemplary grades and dreamed of becoming a doctor so he could care for his grandmother and help other people in need from the community. Teacher Ligaya proudly recounted how her student had won a regional poetry competition, writing a moving text about his idol Manny Pacquiao, and how that victory had brought a small cash prize that allowed him to buy medications for his diabetic grandmother. The boy's dedication deeply impressed the champion, who recognized in him the same fighting spirit that had led him to world glory in the rings and, later, to the political arena where he continued his fight against poverty and social injustice. Vaichai. Young Manny explained that he needed to finish practicing his presentation for a national oratory contest that would take place in just 3 days, an important competition that offered a complete scholarship to the winner. The urgency in the boy's voice was evident. There was very little time left until the big day. With eyes gleaming with determination, the boy confessed that this was his only chance to secure a quality education and a better future for himself and his grandmother, as they couldn't afford to pay for a private school or university in the future. Touched by the boy's story, Pacquiao asked to hear the complete presentation, sitting in one of the small desks that barely accommodated his athletic body. For the next 20 minutes, the world champion watched, mesmerized, as the little Manny passionately delivered a speech about how ordinary Filipinos could transform the country through education, hard work, and compassion for others, values that Pacquiao himself advocated in his political platform and personal life. At the end of the presentation, the disguised boxer applauded enthusiastically, genuinely moved by the wisdom and eloquence of the child who carried not only his name, but also his ideals. Teacher Ligaya explained that, despite his exceptional talent, little Manny faced a major obstacle to participating in the national competition: the lack of resources to buy a proper suit, a requirement for the contest, and to pay for the bus fare to the event venue in Quezon City. The boy worked extra hours selling flowers at traffic lights, but the money was barely enough for his grandmother's medications and food for the week. Without revealing his identity, Pacquiao discreetly asked the teacher how much would be needed to cover these expenses. While young Manny organized his materials and prepared to leave, Ligaya mentioned an amount that represented just a few minutes of work for the multimillionaire, but for that family, it was an unreachable sum. The champion felt a tightness in his chest, realizing how small amounts were still insurmountable barriers for so many compatriots, even after years of his philanthropic work. The boy said goodbye quickly, explaining that he needed to rush to the Central Market, where he would sell flowers for a few more hours before returning home. Pacquiao watched through the window as the little fighter ran through the dusty streets with his worn-out backpack, feeling a mixture of admiration and sadness. That child represented millions of talented Filipinos who would never have the chance to develop their full potential due to adverse economic circumstances, a reality he knew intimately and fought against daily in his political career. After the boy disappeared around the corner, the boxer removed his glasses and revealed his identity to the teacher and the principal, who were paralyzed with surprise and emotion. Although they had suspected something familiar in his behavior and voice, the presence of a celebrity of that caliber in such a humble school seemed so unlikely that they hadn't even considered the possibility. With characteristic humility, Pacquiao asked for details about the young Manny's family situation, discovering that grandmother Esperanza had been raising her grandson alone since the boy's mother, a domestic worker, had died from tuberculosis 3 years earlier, and that they lived in a community particularly affected by the floods of the last monsoon season. Deeply moved, Manny Pacquiao made a decision at that moment that would forever change the life of his little namesake. He would not only provide the suit and transportation for the contest, but would also personally accompany the boy to the event, without revealing his identity, to offer moral support and witness that crucial moment in the child's life. Principal Imelda and teacher Ligaya could barely contain their tears when the champion promised to return the next day with everything necessary, asking only that they keep his visit a secret to avoid commotion and preserve the boy's dignity. The next morning, young Manny Dagahoy arrived at school earlier than usual, hoping to have a few extra minutes to practice his presentation before classes began. His surprise was enormous when he found teacher Ligaya waiting for him with a carefully wrapped package. Inside was a navy blue suit perfectly fitted to his size, an immaculate white shirt, a bow tie, and shiny black shoes. Confused and emotional, the boy couldn't understand how this had happened, while the teacher explained that an anonymous angel had been impressed with his talent and wanted to ensure his participation in the contest. Without revealing the benefactor's identity, Ligaya also handed him an envelope containing enough money for the bus fare and expenses during the 3 days of the national contest, plus an additional amount for grandmother Esperanza's medications. The little Manny, accustomed to hardships and rarely exposed to selfless generosity, tried to contain his tears while holding the gifts with trembling hands. The teacher noticed how he fought against emotion, maintaining the dignified and proud posture he had developed as a defense mechanism in the harsh streets of Manila. During the class break, the boy called his grandmother from a public phone near the school, sharing the wonderful news. Lola Esperanza, with the wisdom of many years of difficult life, advised her grandson to deeply thank whoever the benefactor was, but also to honor that gift with redoubled dedication and excellence in his presentation. As he listened to his grandmother's advice, young Manny smiled, remembering the story she always told about how his late mother, Josefina, had chosen his name during pregnancy after watching a historic Pacquiao fight on a borrowed television, vowing that her son would have the same grit and determination as the national champion. On the eve of the contest, as the young Manny tried on his new suit in front of the broken mirror in his humble residence, a discreet car parked on the dirt road of the community, attracting curious glances from neighbors. From the half-open window, Pacquiao observed the small house of wood and zinc where his namesake lived, vividly remembering his own childhood in similar conditions. The boxer had spent the last few days discreetly investigating the situation of the boy and his grandmother, discovering that, despite their extreme poverty, both were highly respected in the community for their honesty and willingness to always help neighbors, even having so little for themselves. That same night, the champion set in motion the second phase of his plan. His security team and personal assistants, all committed to absolute secrecy, prepared a comfortable vehicle to pick up the boy and his grandmother the following morning, with the excuse that they were part of a support program for contest participants. Little Manny, in his innocence, could never imagine that the seemingly ordinary driver who would pick him up was actually one of the most famous and admired men in the Philippines, determined to personally witness a potentially transformative moment in the life of a child who reminded him so much of himself. The morning of the competition arrived with an exceptionally blue sky over Manila, as if even the weather conspired to make that day perfect. Promptly at 7 o'clock, a black sedan of discreet appearance but impeccably maintained stopped in front of the Dagohoy house. Young Manny waited on the small porch, wearing his new suit with pride, while Lola Esperanza, in her best dress, reserved for special occasions like Easter Masses, leaned on a bamboo cane, determined not to miss her grandson's big presentation despite her legs weakened by age and disease. When the car window rolled down, revealing the driver wearing a cap and dark glasses, neither the boy nor his grandmother recognized the world-famous face of Manny Pacquiao. Although the boxer was one of the most recognizable people in the Philippines, few saw him up close enough to identify him under a well-crafted disguise, and those who had the opportunity to see him like this rarely believed that a celebrity of that magnitude would be driving an ordinary car in such a poor neighborhood. The boxer greeted them with the characteristic humility of Filipinos from the countryside, introducing himself simply as Manolo, a volunteer designated to transport contest participants. With gentleness, he helped Lola Esperanza into the vehicle, noticing how the elderly lady hid the pain in her joints so as not to worry her grandson on his big day, a gesture of silent sacrifice that deeply moved him. For a brief moment, the experienced eyes of the elderly woman studied the driver's face with a curious expression, as if something familiar had caught her attention, but she quickly dismissed the thought. After all, it was impossible that the real Manny Pacquiao would be there, serving as their private driver. During the 40-minute journey to Quezon City, where the competition would be held, the disguised boxer asked simple questions about the boy's life, his aspirations, and his studies, carefully avoiding revealing his true identity. Little Manny, initially shy, soon felt at ease with that gentle man who showed genuine interest in his stories, sharing how he used to watch Pacquiao's fights on a small television at the neighborhood grocery store along with other residents, since they didn't have a device at home, and how those moments of community unity brought joy to lives marked by daily difficulties. Upon arriving at the imposing Philippine Cultural Center, young Manny felt his stomach churn with nervousness at the magnitude of the building and the competition that awaited him. Sensing the boy's anxiety, the disguised champion gently placed his hand on his shoulder and shared a valuable piece of advice he had learned on his own journey. The true champion isn't one who never feels fear, but one who keeps moving forward, even when fear tries to paralyze him. Those simple words, coming from someone the boy considered just a kind driver, calmed his racing heart and rekindled his determination. The main hall of the cultural center was packed, with more than 500 people awaiting the start of the National Youth Oratory competition. In the front row, Lola Esperanza kept her hands together in a silent prayer for her grandson's success, while beside her, still disguised, Manny Pacquiao attentively observed the backstage where the young participants were preparing. Occasionally, some spectator would look twice in the famous boxer's direction, But the cap pulled down, and the dark glasses, combined with the improbability of finding him at a student event without media fanfare, were enough to preserve his anonymity. The opening ceremony began with the Philippine national anthem, followed by speeches from educational authorities and event sponsors who emphasized the importance of oratory and education for the nation's future. When the contestants were finally called to the stage for the initial presentation, little Manny appeared visibly nervous, but with the erect posture and determined look that characterized his resilient personality. Being the 12th to present, the boy had time to observe the other competitors, many of whom demonstrated sophisticated techniques and vocabulary clearly trained by professionals. A feeling of inadequacy began to grow in his chest, making him question whether he really belonged in that environment, dominated by students from elite schools. Backstage, during the break before his presentation, the boy found a quiet corner to mentally review his speech once more. That's when he noticed Manolo discreetly approaching, bringing a bottle of water and words of encouragement. The disguised boxer noticed the insecurity in the boy's eyes and, crouching down to be at eye level with him, shared a personal story about how he himself had felt intimidated before his first international fight, facing opponents with expensive equipment and renowned trainers, while he had only his determination and self-taught technique. That story, which the boy didn't know, was a real experience of Pacquiao himself, lit a renewed flame in his spirit. Manolo concluded his advice by reminding him that true eloquence didn't come from memorized words or studied techniques, but from the authenticity and passion with which one expresses what truly matters. With a shy but determined smile, young Manny thanked him for the support, never imagining he was receiving direct mentoring from his greatest idol, the man who had inspired his name and his dreams. When his name was finally announced, Emmanuel Manny Dagohoy walked to the center of the stage with firm steps, adjusted the microphone to his height, and after taking a deep breath, began his speech on the Filipino spirit of bayanihan and the future of the nation. In the first few sentences, his voice still trembled slightly, but as he delved into the theme he loved so much, insecurity was replaced by a natural and moving eloquence that emanated not from studied techniques, but from experiences lived in the streets of Manila and values learned from his hard-working grandmother. The audience, initially scattered and inattentive after hours of technically correct but emotionally empty presentations, gradually turned their full attention to the small speaker on stage. Young Manny's speech wasn't just about beautiful words or abstract concepts. It was a living testimony of how the Filipino spirit of community cooperation, the bayanihan, continued to transform lives in the country's poorest communities. He described with vivid details how neighbors in his poor neighborhood united during floods to save each other's belongings, how they shared the little food available in times of scarcity, and how the elderly cared for children while parents worked exhausting shifts. In the front row, Lola Esperanza couldn't hold back tears of pride, while beside her, Manny Pacquiao watched with genuine emotion that boy who, unknowingly, was touching on the same values that had guided his own journey from extreme poverty to world stardom. A freelance photographer covering the event for a local newspaper discreetly captured some images of the emotional audience, including, without realizing it, the partially visible profile of the famous boxer. The high point of the speech came when little Manny, with a choked but firm voice, described how his idol Pacquiao represented not only sporting excellence, but the essence of modern bayanihan, for using his influence and resources to elevate other Filipinos and fight for a fairer country where talent and determination could flourish regardless of social origins. When the young orator concluded his presentation, there was a moment of absolute silence in the auditorium, followed by an explosion of applause that surprised even the judges. People stood up, moved by the authenticity and passion of that humble boy who had spoken directly to the hearts of those present. Backstage, competitors from prestigious schools and their tutors looked with a mixture of surprise and admiration at the phenomenon that had just happened, while little Manny, oblivious to the impact he had caused, merely thanked politely and returned to his place, concerned only with having honored the trust of his grandmother and his mysterious benefactor. During the judges' deliberation, which lasted longer than usual due to the heated debate about the unexpectedly powerful presentation by the public schoolboy. Manolo approached Lola Esperanza, offering a handkerchief for her tears and sharing kind words about her grandson's extraordinary talent. The elderly lady, with the wisdom that only advanced age provides, looked deeply into the eyes of the disguised man, and for a brief moment, a flash of recognition passed through her tired gaze. With a discreet smile, she simply whispered, "Thank you for everything, whoever you are," squeezing the champion's hand with silent gratitude, as if intuitively understanding the gesture of humility behind that disguise. The moment of truth arrived when the jury president took the stage to announce the 3 finalists who would receive the coveted scholarships. Silence took over the auditorium as the envelope was opened, and when Emmanuel Dagohoy's name was announced as the grand winner of the national competition, the roar of approval from the audience was so intense it seemed to make the walls of the cultural center tremble. Little Manny was momentarily paralyzed by surprise until one of the organizers gently led him back to the stage, where he received the golden trophy in the shape of an open book and the certificate guaranteeing his complete education, from elementary school to university, in one of the country's most prestigious institutions. The cameras of the main Philippine television channels captured the emotional moment when young Manny, trophy in hand, searched the audience for the face of his beloved grandmother. When he found her in the front row, his eyes shone with gratitude and love, a silent communication that needed no words. Beside Lola Esperanza, the disguised boxer applauded with genuine enthusiasm, feeling a pride that normally only parents experience, an inexplicable connection with that boy who carried his name and, in many ways, his spirit. After the award ceremony, while journalists crowded to interview the unlikely champion from the public school in Manila, Manolo discreetly led Lola Esperanza to a private room that had been reserved in advance. There, when little Manny finally managed to escape the media attention and joined them, the boxer slowly removed his dark glasses and cap, finally revealing his true identity. The shock on the boy's face was indescribable, a mixture of disbelief, admiration, and sudden understanding of everything that had happened in the last few days. With the humility that characterized him, even after conquering worldwide fame and fortune, Pacquiao explained how he had been deeply touched by the boy's determination and his dedication to his grandmother, recognizing in him the same fighting spirit that had propelled him on his own journey. The champion then revealed that the scholarship was just the beginning. He would personally ensure specialized medical treatment for Lola Esperanza at one of the best clinics in the country, and would also provide a new and safe house for both of them in a better neighborhood, away from the floods and difficulties they had faced for so long. Having overcome the initial surprise, little Manny did something unexpected that moved even Pacquiao's experienced security guards. Instead of celebrating the promised material gifts, the boy simply hugged his idol tightly, thanking him not for the money or sudden fame, but for believing in him when few did, for giving him the chance to prove his worth through his own effort and talent. That sincere embrace, free from pretensions or interests, deeply touched the champion's heart, reminding him of the reasons why he had started his political career and his social programs. In the weeks that followed, the story of the meeting between the two Mannys went viral on Filipino social media and television programs, inspiring a wave of similar initiatives across the country. Only after the contest, with the express permission of young Manny and his grandmother, did Pacquiao allow the story to be publicly disclosed. The video of the moment when Pacquiao revealed his identity, discreetly captured by one of his assistants, was viewed by millions of people around the world, moving viewers with the genuine connection between the talented boy from the slums and the world champion who never forgot his humble origins. International celebrities and political leaders praised the gesture. But what really mattered to Pacquiao was the message that story conveyed to other Filipino children in vulnerable situations, that their talents were valuable and deserved to be seen, regardless of where they came from. A year later, young Manny Dagohoy, now a scholarship student at one of the best schools in Manila and living with his grandmother in a comfortable and safe house, returned to Lapu-Lapu Elementary School. No longer as a student, but as the founder of an oratory and leadership program for underprivileged children. By his side was his mentor and friend, Manny Pacquiao, no longer disguised but proudly supporting the initiative of the boy who had touched his heart. Together, they demonstrated the true meaning of modern bayanihan, the chain of kindness that multiplies when people in privileged positions extend a hand to elevate others, creating a virtuous cycle of social transformation that no public policy or government program could ever achieve alone. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to our channel.